siamo l'Orchestra di Nico Valley di Chicago. Good evening and welcome. We are the Nico Valley Band from Chicago. We're so excited to be here with you tonight. Tonight you're going to have a little misto, a mix of American and Italian music. It's kind of our offering that we had to give to the Italians as kind of what we're all about. But I hope that you enjoy, of course, the music. But also, you're going to see a lot of growth with the kids that have experienced having this trip by sharing in the culture, the food, the language, the people. Isabella, Gianni, Carmine, Luca, Pepino. So I hope you enjoy tonight. Thank you so much for coming.
So we're going to start with day 3 officially of our trip, but it's kind of our first official touring day. So the third day of the trip, it began with a tour of the Vatican City, and once inside, we walked through all the courtyards and saw views of all the cool buildings in the Vatican. And then we went to the Sistine Chapel itself, which is kind of the big thing that we were there for. I'll advise you right now, don't ask your kids for pictures of this, because if they took them, that's illegal, and that's really not good. So if you Google it, you'll find the same pictures. Anyways, we moved out after that to St. Peter's Square and saw some really extraordinary architecture and more than enough pigeons, too. We had our free time for lunch after we saw the square, and it was here that we Americans learned Italians like to charge money for water. It was really sad to us for high schoolers. After that free time that we had lunch, and then we boarded our buses to go to our first concert venue, I hope I'm saying this right, the Kiss of Valdese. We met our clinician there, and he's the maestro at the Conservatory Luigi Cherubini, all the way over in Florence. That's a good 5-hour drive away from Rome. He spoke very little English, and we generally speak very little Italian, but it was really cool to me how we were able to overcome that language barrier through the music that we played. We rehearsed with him for a couple more hours, and then we began our actual concert. We left the doors to the church open, so it would allow people that were hearing us on the streets to come in if they wanted to hear more of us. Don't get me wrong, I love seeing people come into the church as we play the music, but I was sitting right near the door, and I discovered here that Italy in the spring is cold. Regardless, we had an outstanding first concert in a beautiful church with a fantastic selection of music that you're about to hear tonight, and it resonated really well in the church too. And there was just this energy among the band that brought the night to life. The first piece we presented to the audience, Nabucco, which is what you just heard, in my opinion, couldn't have been better. The percussion, bucket drumming that you'll hear soon captivated the audiences too, and I will also be the first to admit that the 3 piccolos playing a rather brisk, clean-cut solo, which you'll hear later, in a giant resonant church sounds interesting. The encore that followed the end of our program was just as electric as the rest of the show, as it was for the next 2 concerts. As the night came to a close and we boarded our buses, the energy buzzing throughout our group was something really amazing and new, and I know I'd never felt it before. It was like this mix of exhaustion, happiness, fatigue, and excitement all coursing through my veins at once. It's a hard feeling to put into words. It was then, it still is now, but I can remember that back then I couldn't wait to feel it again at our next concert. Thank you.
My name is Ela. I hope you enjoyed that last piece. But continuing on with our trip, day 4 in Italy took us through Imperial Rome, provided for many rounds of gelato, and ended with an opera recital in the evening. We got to sleep in until 8 a.m. Yes, that was considered sleeping in. And we started the day by touring the Spanish Steps and the city's main attractions. Following that, we enjoyed free time that consisted of mostly eating and more eating. And after that, we saw and toured the Colosseum. I remember just standing around with the group after seeing the Colosseum, and we were laughing because some street musicians were playing Candid on D on repeat. Seriously, it went on forever. After a few more hours of touring, we returned to that same spot, and they still had Taco Bell going strong. But the thing about it that I will definitely never forget is that we were simply gathered around sharing that moment together. The day came to a close with a wonderful opera performance and a look at Rome in the nighttime. Speaking for myself and most of the band, this was by far one of our favorite days. But with much more to see, and now here, I'd now like to move on to West Side Story.
Hi, my name is Isabella. I'm not usually a savvy person, nor do I like reading from note cards, but we're going to do both of those things tonight. Our second concert of the trip was so much more than any other concert. The high ceilings of the venue allowed for our sound to become so much more resonant than we could ever hope to have it like back home. And sure, the stage was smaller than we would have liked it, and it led to a more than slightly cramped piccolo solo, but that minor issue meant nothing compared to the rest of the performance. Saying that we sound fantastic shouldn't come as much of a surprise though, and I hope that I speak for everyone when I say that the concert that night was so much more than 9 well-played pieces. For me personally, this concert marked the first time that I connected with multiple people on this trip. It was the first time that I really came to realize that I was with about 85 lovely people who wanted me to have the best experience that I could. This concert wasn't just about the music. In fact, it was barely about the music at all. For me, it was about the people I got to know because of this concert took place.
And so on day 6, we woke up in our Montecatini hotel and bussed over to Florence. The first thing we did was visit the Accademia Gallery where Michelangelo's famous David is housed. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know that much marble existed until I left Naperville. Talk about culture shock. We also, in the Accademia Gallery, we also got to see unfinished but stunning statues by Michelangelo, paintings dating back to the 1300s, as well as a historical instrument section, aka a band kid's dream. After that, we had a walking tour of the city, seeing Florence's Duomo and the Gates of Paradise. After our tour, we had leisure time in the city for lunch. It wasn't this time, I had the best pasta in my life. So good, in fact, I cried. Now, this part of the day does actually have 2 stories because based on personal choice, half of the group stayed in Florence to continue leisure, while the other half got back on buses to visit Siena, a historical town. The town was quaint and peaceful like something out of a fairy tale. Siena is actually famous for the Palio, which is a traditional horse race that dates back to the Middle Ages. We got to see the oldest bank in Europe, the Piazza del Campo, where the races are held, as well as visiting Siena's Duomo, which houses music books from the 1500s that we had learned about freshman year in our music history unit. After that, both groups met back in Montecatini for free time and dinner.
Hi, my name's Matt. Instead of going down to Siena for the day, I stayed back in Florence, and I will say, La Siena would have been a lot of fun. I'm really glad I stayed behind in Florence because I had the best time of my life that day. We started, after our guided tour in Florence, my small group and me, we all went down to, in a church, inside of a church, there was the oldest panini shop in Florence, and that was a really good sandwich. That was really good lunch, I must say. And then we went to the other side of that church and got the most famous gelato in the city, which was also very good. After we ate lunch, we walked through the streets, and we came to the river that goes through the city. And we crossed a bridge. We were hanging out on the bridge for a while. We were just watching the calm current go by, and people in their kayaks, going through the river. And it was taking some group photos. And that was really calm and peaceful. And then we continued down the street, and on the other side of the river, we walked up a really steep and really tall mountain. And not a mountain, it was kind of a hill with, buildings and stuff on it. So we got to the top of the hill, and there was a massive fort. And we walked around the edges of this fort, and we came through a gate, and we went into the Babali Gardens. And this was just a beautiful garden. We were walking around here, and we came to a square in the middle of this garden, and all you could see was the side of the hill that we were on. And if you look past the hill, you see the roofs of the city. And it was just spectacular, taking all these group photos and taking all these pictures, taking it all in. It's just amazing. I joined up with my small group. We became the artsy photo gang, taking pictures all day with each other, some portrait mode effects. That was really funny. So we're walking around, we're taking in all these views, and it was just absolutely amazing, breathtaking. Like, I would pay $1 million to go back if I could. So the day came to an end. We walked back to the square, got on the bus, head back to our hotel, and had some nice dinner. Thank you.
Buongiorno. I have the wonderful opportunity to speak to you about the beautiful city of Venice. We arrived in Venice by boat because Venice is a collection of 118 islands. It doesn't have any roads, it has canals. The bright side of not having any roads is we didn't have to worry about being run over like the rest of Italy. The main transportation in Venice is the gondola. Unfortunately, it was raining in high tide, so we didn't want to get stuck under any bridges, so we couldn't ride any gondolas. But we did get to see some amazing sights. The first place we visited was the Doge Palace. This place was extremely detailed and had some of the most gorgeous gilded ceilings I had ever seen. The Doge Palace was used as a political center for Venice. Venice was one of the first successful Republican nations. After the Doge Palace, we went to see where they made Venetian glass. Out of the entire trip, this is one of my most favorite experiences. We watched as this man made a beautiful vase out of using glass blowing, and then out of the molten glob of glass on top, he pulled out a horse. It was amazing to witness. I don't know any other way to describe it other than he pulled it out of the vase. So after that, they took us into the showroom where they demonstrated some of the properties of the glass and explained how they got such vibrant colors. And I think this was the most anxious part of the trip, as our tour guide took the glasses and started smashing them on the table and hitting them together like they were cymbals. And then our tour guide takes this intricate vase off of the shelf and she goes, "I do this all the time. Look, 1, 2, then puts it back on the shelf." And I could hear an audible sigh of relief from everybody in that room. So after that, we had a substantial amount of free time just to explore Venice and get some food and some souvenirs. And it was there where I had the best thing that I ate. And it was like a wrap. And instead of using a flat piece of bread, they used a pizza. And it was ingenious, it was amazing. So after that, we got gelato for the second time that day. And then we went to St. Mark's Basilica, which had these ornate oriental mosaics made of thousands of shards of Venetian glass. That's when we started to go home, and as we waited for the bus, or the boat, this bright pink passenger boat pulls up. And everyone's joking, they're like, "Oh, I hope that's our boat, check out that party boat." And lo and behold, that was our boat. We took the boat, the pink party boat, to the buses, and then from the buses to the hotel. And although this trip was such an unforgettable and amazing experience, our day in Venezia had to be my favorite.
saw the audience until I looked up. It's good to see you guys are out there. My name is Bob McBride. I have the distinct privilege of being the principal of Nico Valley and is self-appointed because I had to appoint an administrative chaperone for this fine trip to chaperone these guys administratively across Italy. I just wanted to add a few remarks myself, but I want to start first by the purpose of travel. You know, so often familiarity can be our enemy. We come and go. We experience things like the music we're hearing come to play in Lentz Hall. You might expect that all the music teachers that you'll have are just like these music teachers. And we go through our day in places like Naperville and Plainfield and Bolingbrook, and we see the things around us and we begin to expect that that is the way life is. But one of the reasons why I think we travel abroad is to lose that familiarity and to really rediscover ourselves. We feel a glaring difference when we walk into a foreign nation. We begin to feel very self-conscious about who we are and how we do things. And suddenly we rediscover that we don't just always have teachers like this. We are not always so lucky to be in spaces like this. We are not always so lucky to have bandmates and friends and opportunities and parents that send us abroad and say, hey, I want to put my treasure behind you. I want to pay for this trip. I want to support you and do this. We actually rediscover ourselves. We travel 5,000 miles away only to find out who we are. And that's a magical and amazing thing, and I was so lucky to be a part of it. There are a lot of thanks that I have to give, and the first thanks and foremost, I really want to thank Jonathan Loft. This is the first time in his career that he had to, bring one of these tours together, and there are 1,000 details before, during, and even after. So, could you give Mr. Loft? To go on a trip, and my job is really more to be at the ready and then just watch somebody else be in charge of something. And then Andy Siddell, Corinne Collier, and Emily Binder. Fabulous teachers. How blessed are you that your children have had these teachers? And I have a challenge for you guys. A couple of weeks ago, I have a challenge for you. And oftentimes my staff knows that I'll say thanks not spoken. There's no thanks at all. And I really want to rejoin the challenge that I hope each and every one of you have said face to face to them, or written an email, or you can write a note. And I know it's kind of awkward to do it, but just say thank you. Teachers do not get up in the morning and say, gosh, let's get great test scores today. They do it for you. They do it to lift you up. And they really do it for your thanks and your appreciation. And so I really hope you can find a special time where you extend that. It's very important. I want to thank all of the parents who went on the trip with us. I'm not going to make you stand up. But we could not have done, we were like a Roman legion, the numbers that we had. And sometimes we were like a Roman legion column coming down the street. It was amazing. We could not have done this trip without the parents who went with us, including Emily Binder's father and Catherine, and really amazing to have all of those adults to just kind of wrap our arms around the students. So could you give them a big round of applause? Please round of applause. I want to thank my wife, Katie McBride, who's right over there, because I was gone for a week, and without my family, we were hosting Easter. So I sauntered in on Saturday night, ready to go to sleep, and we had all these people coming over. So could you give my wife a big round of applause? Please not give yourself a big round of applause, but can we give a standing ovation to the parents who sent you on this trip? Would you mind doing that? I know you have your instruments, but let's get ourselves up if you can do it. Give a big round of applause. Bravo. We're applauding you. You guys are amazing for doing that. Thanks, I appreciate that. In closing, I do have a number of favorite moments during the trip. One was our very first concert. There was a mischievous little boy who wanted so badly to grab the back end of Ender's trombone. And Edgar was a total pro, ice cold. Just kept on playing, and this little boy kept on reaching for it. His dad kept on grabbing it. What a great, a sweet, very, very sweet memory. Just walking with you, most of my memories are just walking with you, walking and talking and having ancient civilizations and Renaissance civilizations underneath our feet. I don't want to leave any of the parents thinking that this wasn't also a very intellectual trip. We really, in the cradle, of one of the great civilizations, we handled really hard-hitting intellectual debates like, is a hot dog a sandwich? And we haven't really solved that debate, although I'm kind of solved it. We're very torn. Torn as good. Bus 2, we really tried to mentor Bus 1. Try to coach them up to travel a little bit more in style. But just so many great memories. I had a personal great memory where I got to in Florence see some very, very dear and old friends of mine and reconnect with them, and that meant the world to me. But the most important memory that I'll have is the moment, even at the first concert, every time it happened, because any performer who does this, it's a dare. When Mr. Loft turned around during the Stars and Stripes and encouraged the audience to clap. And Stars and Stripes is one of the most American of American tunes. It really represents our country. It represents us on the world stage. And it comes at the end of the concert, and I wondered, would people clap? It's this most American of songs. And they did, every single time, with gusto. And it told me a number of things that I think you should be aware of. You might not speak Italian, but what a great gift in your life that you are fluent in music. Because people only clap along with you if you've earned it. And I think what those audiences were saying to you is, you earned it. They were going to clap with you at the song that represents America. Because you earned it. You spoke to them. You spoke to their hearts. And you stepped out on a stage as young people and represented our nation, and represented your families, and represented your school, and your community, and our district. Not with anything else than your instruments. And you earned it artistically. And as a group of young Americans, I can't think of anything better that we should be doing out on the world stage than having the humility to perform in front of others who speak a different language and a different culture than us, and earn their clapping. And you earned it, and that was a beautiful thing. In Italian, you can do the brutta figura or the bella figura. The brutta figura is a bad impression, brutto malo. The bella figura is a beautiful figure. You cast a beautiful figure. I just want to thank you guys for casting a beautiful figure. You did the bella figura. So, tanti belle così, auguri. You guys did a great job. I was very proud of you as your principal, but also as a human being in this world. Could you guys give these guys a big round of applause? Thanks so much. As always.
Good evening. Don't they sound great? Dr. McBride already alluded to this, but this is important enough that I think repeating a little bit is quite all right. It's one thing to say you're going to go to Italy. It's another thing to plan that trip. If you ever planned a family trip, there's a lot going into it. But when your family is 121 people and you're going overseas, that's a lot. And this idea started well over a year ago. And I vividly remember the preliminary talks. Hey, where should we go? Where do you want to go? Italy. Ooh. All right. But then from there, the whole idea had to come to life. And it was Mr. Loft that brought that to life. He is one of the most selfless, caring people we know. And he put in hours upon hours that we don't even know about to make this happen. And what you've done is you've given us the gift that will last our lifetime, that has filled our hearts and our minds full of images and experiences that are absolutely priceless. And we are so thankful for your work and everything you did to make that come to be. I'm already in the hot seat for saying that much, so I will just say again, thank you so much. We are so indebted to you. Let's get back to the music, shall we?
We learned in Italy that you always have to do an encore, so we'll do an encore in just a second here. We'll do Nabucco. I do want to thank a couple people, and I think I am going to make the travelers, the parents and the siblings that went with us, I am going to ask you to stand up. It's one thing to, probably sign up initially and go, oh yeah, let's go to Italy. But as we were departing in the bus, it was funny, we were gathering in the lobby, and there were some parents who were like, thank you for taking my kid for a week. And then we had some parents getting on the bus. They were going to spend not only the week with their kids, but lots of other kids too. And the parents were so great on the trip. And they chaperoned the kids in small groups. They stepped in when they just needed to step in, either to help move equipment, or even just to say, hey, we're kind of clogging up the walkway here, let's move. It was just terrific. So parents that went along and siblings, would you please stand up and enjoy our applause, please? I want to thank Dr. McBride too. This is the first time as my trip leader. I've traveled. We've done this since 2001, but it is a little different when you're the trip leader and that responsibility. And knowing that Dr. McBride was going on the trip was really a nice sense of calm for me, and it was, again, was super helpful. And again, had that great balance of, hey, I can be helpful right now doing this. And I'm going to let them do their thing here, and was so great with the kids and everything. So thank you, Dr. McBride. I want to thank our school board too. It's really nice that we have the opportunity to do this. I mean, they had to approve the trip. We laid it out for them and had the support of our administration, but the school board approved it. And time again, they approve these trips. And I think that's really, really great of them to be able to offer that. So thank you to our school board. I felt like on the trip we were very well taken care of. The tour company that we went with, I think, just did a fantastic job. I just felt like all the time I knew what was going on. The guides were terrific. Isabella and Gianni were they were great. I think they would probably have an argument that if one was better than the other. They were. On all of our tours, we've had good tour guides, but it's usually one is clearly kind of in charge, and the other one is kind of. But both of these guys were just great, and everything was well prepared, well thought out, and well taken. Everything, even down from the meals and making sure all the dietary concerns were taken care of and everything. They really did a great job. So bravo to MCI and all the work that they did for us too. And I too want to thank our spouses. They went on the trip, Mr. Bender and Mr. Collier, and Mrs. West, and my wife went on the trip too. You don't do this kind of a thing without taking it home for the year and a half it takes to plan. And so it was great that they're so supportive of everything that we do and plan for and all that kind of stuff. So thank you to our spouses. Some of these guys got to know my little boy Jeremy, who's in second grade at Springbrook, and he's a big fan of all the Niqua kids, and he told me to say hello from him and all that. So and they were great with him on the trip and everything too. So very much appreciate that. So I'll still send out a couple remind texts here and there. You've probably seen I've set up a way for us to share photographs in the Google Drive, and we'll just leave that open. It's been a crazy week with NVSO and everything, so it's not like we've had a lot of time to do a lot of stuff since we've been back. But as the week unfolds in a couple of weeks, please dump in pictures that you can, especially into that app. The tour company is just going to turn that into a DVD for free. So anything you can put in that app will be great. They'll just make that a part of the DVD. But then in the Google Drive, we'll just always have those. And you can go in and pick out whichever ones you want and just have however you want to do it. On your way out, there's some bags from MCI. We ended up with some extras. So if you saw some bags out there that are next to the programs, I don't want to take them back to the band room. So you can have one. If they're still out there, go ahead and take one. And I think with that, can you guys think of anything else? Well, here's an encore.